Holy crap, Marvel fans, breaking and industry-shattering news. Victoria Alonso, an executive at Marvel Studios, has parted ways with the company after being with them for 17 plus years. This is an absolutely massive story with big implications for Marvel Studios and all the content that's coming out in the next couple of years leading into Secret Wars. And on top of that, since the news dropped yesterday, a ton of people have come forward to give context to why she was actually fired. And I do believe that's the most accurate way to say it, that she was fired. Of course, they don't want you to think she was fired. She doesn't want you to think she was fired. They might not use that language, but it's pretty clear when you have a top executive that you promoted in 2021 leaving the company, something happened. Something was going awry, and we have a better idea of what that actually was. So in this video, I'll break down the first report. I'll give all the context, and I'll give my take on what it means for Marvel at the end of the video. By the way, this is one of two videos I'm releasing today about mind-blowing, like industry-shaking news. You have this story with Victoria Alonso leaving, and you have the story of Damon Lindelof walking away from the Star Wars movie that they've been building around him for 2 years, and they're trying to get out in 2025. It's crazy. So both of these videos probably gonna have lighter edits, but the news is wild. So I wanted to get the news out to you guys and try to explain it as thoroughly and as clearly as I can. So smash a freaking like on this video and let's get into it. Now, the deal is with this feels like a dub. I want to say that right away. It feels like a dub, and there are multiple reasons as to why I think Victoria Alonso is a particularly good target for a firing, for something like that happening. And you might be like, wait, what do you mean? What's going on? Well, Bob Iger has been talking a lot to investors and basically to Wall Street that there's going to be accountability at Marvel Studios and at Star Wars. These two studios, which of course are under the Disney umbrella, have been having a ton of problems in the past couple of years for different reasons. But essentially, profits are down, the hype is down, and the stock price is down. And so Iger comes in, replaces Chapek, and one of the things he's been preaching is accountability, accountability, accountability. And from an executive perspective, one of the things you do to really let people know that you're serious about accountability is firing some people, right? You've heard this expression before. Sometimes in business, heads gotta roll. You gotta make an example. And I'm gonna explain to you why I think Victoria Alonso is uniquely positioned to be a good firing. But let's talk facts first. Why was she fired? Now, when the article first dropped explaining that she had parted ways with Marvel Studio, many people looked to past comments made by her as perhaps a reason as to why she was being let go. She has said some pretty wild things, out-of-pocket things about the Marvel properties. She's definitely like an identity politics type person. So she has this crazy quote talking about how it shouldn't even be called the X-Men anymore because there are women there, and there's this sexist nature to the word X-Men, despite the X-Men being one of the most inclusive and I would argue progressive, like identity politics-esque book ever. So she's gotten into some hot water and definitely let it be known that she is a left-leaning person that'll stand up for ideals that she believes in, right? But in today's current climate, that's kind of triggering for a lot of people, as many people view the culture war and leaning to left and sort of leaving behind people that lean right as a big problem with Disney in particular. And in fact, if you follow the investor calls for Disney, this has been something that's been going on from the investment side of things as well. So there's not just people on Twitter or just people out there in the world that are upset because Disney's going woke or doing woke things, but even investors are starting to say things like we shouldn't be asserting ourselves into political situations. There's obviously a big group of conservative consumers, or at least consumers, that are a little bit tired of pushy identity politics. I think that bears itself out in a couple of different examples, like Top Gun Maverick making as much money as it did. There was even a whole attempted takeover of the board by a conservatively minded group of investors. And so this is something that is certainly on Bob Iger's mind, right? It's gotten to his desk. And so some people think, well, maybe that's a reason as to why Victoria Alonso was let go, to sort of signal to both investors and the public that Disney's not going to let people with, maybe more radical views, just do what they want in these companies. However, I actually don't think that has much to do with this at all. The real juice here, though, is that Victoria Alonso asserted herself very publicly during the whole Florida versus Disney thing that happened with Ron DeSantis. You know what I'm talking about. She made some very public statements that sort of positioned Disney against Florida. And remember, Bob Chapek himself initially tried to be very hands-off on that situation. He didn't want to get into that fight. And it's possible that people like Victoria Alonso and others kind of pushed Disney into that position and into that fight. And I think regardless of how you view what was going on in Florida, it's probably not a good idea for a 4-quadrant family-friendly brand such as Disney to be getting involved in such prolific and important political debates for people. Like, people that were mad are just going to be even more mad. And this did end up costing Disney in some way, although I think that's kind of unclear for now. Some kind of tax-exempt status has been revoked in Florida, perhaps losing Disney millions and millions of dollars. And I think that having more to do with actually hurting the company, not so much because of her political views, could be a reason as to why Bob Iger and maybe others didn't want to keep her around. But the real truth, guys, and the major reason that Victoria Alonso was let go has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with visual effects and VFX houses. In 2021, she was promoted to the president of physical and post-production, visual effects, and animation production. And one of the major issues with Marvel over the past couple of years has been their visual effects, but it kind of goes deeper than just having bad digital effects. Marvel Studios has a process in which they change things creatively for their stories right up into the last minute, and then they go back to these VFX houses and they ask for clean, fully rendered visual effects in a really short timed window to get those effects out there for the film. This puts a lot of pressure on the VFX houses. Now, the flip side of this, of course, is that Marvel themselves actually give most of the industry work, like the paid money gigs, to these visual effects houses. They are completely dependent on Marvel. And apparently, Victoria Alonso was a completely toxic, super bully-esque person when dealing with these VFX houses. This has come out from multiple different sources, and I've even had some people close to me that I know work in animation and visual effects tell me that this was indeed the case. Apparently, behind closed doors, she was a kingmaker, playing very political games. If somebody upset her, a certain VFX house upset her, they would no longer get business. And she was apparently just really toxic to that entire process. And what I'm hearing is this firing or her going away is something of an olive branch to the rest of these VFX houses. Marvel is really trying to smooth out that relationship between the VFX houses and themselves, because they definitely need that relationship to be good to be able to continue to do what they do with their movies. Now, one really big example of where this hurt Marvel badly is actually Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was missing a bunch of key action sequences because the visual effects for those were just simply not done. And this likely has to do, again, with the bad relationship Disney has with these VFX houses. We also heard reports that they changed last minute to make some of these VFX people work on Wakanda Forever, leaving Quantumania kind of out to dry. And in my opinion, the movie is way worse without big action sequences. And I think they've even edited it in funny and weird ways because the visual effects were not done. So you see, it's not just the fact that the VFX don't look good, it's that entire process being gummed up has affected the quality of a lot of different Marvel projects. It's wild, and that's the biggest reason as to why Victoria Alonso is out of there. So what do I think? Like, what is this going to do for Marvel Studios? I actually, again, I just want to say, I think this is a W, because I personally was not a huge fan of Victoria Alonso. Some of the things she said bothered me quite a bit. And I don't have anything against you having your own beliefs. I don't have anything against that. But I think when you're literally saying that one of the most iconic names like X-Men and one of the most, again, progressive franchises of all time, like, isn't quote unquote woke enough and it has to be changed via the name, that's like completely out of pocket. Like, that's like way too far, not really being in touch with the fan base, voice and just having your own really weird fringe ideas, right? So like, even for just that reason, I'm okay with Victoria going. I also think there's a bunch of fans that are way more bothered by all that identity politics stuff than me. Like, I honestly really don't care that much, guys. I think the X-Men shit's like way out of pocket, but I really don't care. However, it would actually be better if we had less disgruntled, angry Marvel fans out there. I know some of you are like, what? That's crazy. Don't placate to those people. Now, bro, like, I'm literally saying, yes, placate to them, because what we ultimately want is a better experience as a fan, right? It ain't that deep. I just want a better experience for the fans. But really, that's just the icing on the cake. Like, that's essentially going to help Marvel from some PR perspective angles. But the reality is her getting out of the way and helping the VFX relationship be better for Marvel Studios will be absolutely paramount moving forward. They've got years of millions and millions of dollars of VFX to do for these films. They need to go big. They need to go crazy. We need that relationship to work. And with the slowdown that Marvel is implementing as well, I see this as really being a path forward for both parties, which will ultimately be better for fans. Now, there is a small, seemingly very negative aspect to this story, which we haven't seen play out yet, and I hope maybe we can avoid. And that's the reality that this feels like Bob Iger coming in and kicking down doors and sort of throwing his weight around and, well, firing people. And to me, the only concern I have about this is, how does it affect Kevin Feige? Kevin Feige is the linchpin to this entire operation over there. He's already been under a lot of stress. There's already a lot of adjustments and things that he needs to make. He just lost one of his top lieutenants in kind of an embarrassing way. What I would absolutely hate is for him to start having true animus towards Disney, towards Bob Iger, and towards his own job. That's going to be very self-destructive for the MCU in general. Now, I believe that Kevin Feige is something of a consummate professional. He's so much more measured in the way he interacts with fans and even answers questions. Seems to really have that on lock. Also, we've heard recently his ambitions go all the way to the top of Disney, being something of an Alan Horn, being in charge of all of their like animation and movies, right? So I would think that he's just going to understand what's happening, soldier on, and continue to just focus on the work itself. But there's this sliver of doubt to me now that this has happened, and I'm like, wow, this could actually be really self-destructive for the entire structure of leadership over at Marvel Studios. Could be the beginning of a domino effect that would be very bad. I hope not. So that's it, guys. That's the whole story with Victoria Alonso, the actual truth, and kind of why I think she's uniquely a good person to fire if you're going to fire someone. And I think this will be a W for Marvel Studios. Throw a like on this video. Let me know your thoughts about it in the comment section below. And if you want to watch more, why not check out this really big, awesome video I just did all about how to actually fix the problems in the MCU.